Thank you so much for the presentation, Mr. Nitan Singh. I am sure many of our esteemed guests now knows much about cross identity. We request you to kindly come here on the dais for the fireside chat. We also request the founder and chairman of Cross Identity, who is a leader in the identity and access management domain, who founded Cross Identity, which was formerly known as Elantis in 2000, after working for leading IT companies like Digital Equipments, Computer Associates, since which who managed over 10 million identity life cycles and delivered thousands of identity and access management implementation for some of the biggest brands in the world, including Fortune 500 companies, whose company has been recognized by industry analysts Gartner and Kuppinger Cole for its excellence and vision in identity and access management. Mr. Binod Singh to kindly come upon the dais. We request Mr. Venkataraman, CISO, Spandana Spurti, to kindly moderate the chat.
Yeah, good morning all. Welcome to this fireside chat. So I would like to ask, in terms of cybersecurity architecture, what is the modern place of identity and access management?
As all the analysts and leading customers in the world have been talking, there is a new positioning that has emerged over the last few years. The cybersecurity itself is now being called identity first security. And this was a term that was coined by Gartner first and has now become so popular and everybody talking about it. What essentially it means is that you may do all the different tools on cybersecurity. And when I talk to CISOs today, I find that at an average, a mid-sized corporate organization has at least 7 to 8 cybersecurity tools. But unless you put identity in the center and connect all of it to the identity and access part of it, the effectiveness of cybersecurity is just not going to be there. So IAM in that sense has become a central point, which is unfortunately not yet sunk in with all the communities and organizations in India. But those who have started realizing that, I can see the beginning is being made by a large number of organizations. I've met at least 80 CISOs, 80 in the last 6-7 months. I'm talking about in-depth discussions because that's what I do. I don't run so much of business anymore, being in this space for 24 long years, different parts of the world. I'm more of an evangelizer of IAM domain rather than selling our products. And I can see India, as it happens always, is catching up so fast. The thinking is changing so radically. But coming back to your question, it's not about identity and access management is becoming the core and central point to the entire cybersecurity domain.
Thank you.
Let me add, mentioned, is that it's no longer network security that matters. People are logging in from all over the place, and if you really think about it, most of your employees, when they go to the office, their phones are still connected to 4G, 5G. They don't even often connect to the office network. And they have a lot of business applications on it. That office network is doing nothing to protect the applications on that mobile device, and this is the case around the world. So identity is the most logical center to start security from, and we're talking about not identity again, we're talking about the accounts that those identities utilize in the IT infrastructure. And it's the most logical place to start the security controls, but also the entire cybersecurity architecture, including all your other products, ITDR, XDR, endpoint management, CrowdStrike, all of these things. We have to interact with each other to, just like a police in a city interacts with the state police on the state boundaries or the highway patrol on the highways. We're all part of the trying to bring the same solution to customers, to businesses, and we need to enable one another, and that happens through tight integrations and particularly now through risk signals. So risk signals generated by an identity and access management platform should be easily consumable by any other cybersecurity platform and vice versa. And there's a term for this from Gartner called cybersecurity mesh architecture. And there's a similar related concept from Coppinger Cole called identity fabric. And in terms of architecture, when we're talking about identity and access management, one of an identity and access management vendor's duties going forward is to generate as many possible and innovate the best possible risk signals that we can create for our own consumption by our own platform, as well as for consumption by other cybersecurity tools.
Thank you. How should IIM vendors influence customers? Or should customers be left to develop their own understanding and make their own decisions?
This is a very interesting question. On one side, vendors have little influence on customers because customers have made up their mind, and all customers generally go by year to year. They've got their budgets, they've got a certain way of thinking, and they are independent and they take their own decisions. On the other side, vendors, like ourselves for sure, who have been in this space for a long time, see immense possibility of influencing the long-term thinking of organizations, not to suit their technology, not to suit their roadmaps. And this is what I see happening all over. Sorry to say, but American companies are great in that area. I've lived there for 16 years in identity and access management, and I've seen that almost every single feature that is brought out is not based on solving problems, but how can I increase my revenue? And that thinking, if it goes, I'm not saying that cybersecurity or IAM companies should not be profit-oriented. Yes, they got to make some profit. But then, as Nitant was pointing out just earlier, this has to be seen as a very noble profession, like that of doctors or somebody. You're not into cybersecurity just for doing business. We very strongly feel that way, and I think vendors have a great role to play, provided they drop their only attachment to making profits, and they can play a very major role then.
I'll add a small point here. I'll reiterate on what I'd spoken about earlier. Vinod already said a lot of things that we've been talking about today. But I would like to add that when it comes to protecting our customers, unfortunately, one has to start taking a stance that you'll see one thing that I appreciated when I saw from Okta. If you have ever seen Okta's single multi-factor authentication documentation, they mention over there that we give an option for SMS OTP, but we do not recommend you use it because it is weak and it is dependent on SMS servers and things like that. But that is a more limited this thing. We would go as far as to say that our next strong push in access management will be to drop passwords altogether. The support is there in the platform, but biometrics, every phone has facial recognition now. Every phone has, every laptop has the thumbprint, fingerprint recognition, and biometric devices to attach to a computer that's perhaps old hardly cost 3,000-4,000 rupees. We're going to be doing a strong push towards biometric authentication because it solves so many problems. It's so easy, it's far more secure. People have been talking about phasing out credentials for a long time, password-based credentials, but nobody's really doing anything about it except for raising awareness, but The vendors are not standing behind that. We want to, and we will be standing more and more behind our design decisions, and even to the extent that certain things eventually we will simply not allow unless there's no other way for it to be done, as I had explained in the beginning with the example of the finance department.
I'll just add one small point that came to my mind. If you look at products that are there, he talked about biometric authentication, and it should become the norm, not an exception. But if you look at most of the vendors, almost all the vendors, they offer biometric part of it or passwordless authentication as a separate module, payable separately. We are perhaps the only exception in the industry which does not charge anything extra. And the thought behind that is very simple, that this is a need, an absolute requirement which we feel, and we don't see why it should be coming as a separate module and payable extra. So the same thinking that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to hear that, like say, identity security, identity access management vendors, rather than selling their products, they should focus on the mitigating the risk, just like doctors are arresting diseases by consultation and all. So when IAM vendors think about a risk holistically and how to reduce that risk, because in cybersecurity, security starts from identity, I believe. If identity security is hack proof, then it will lead to make our data hack proof as well as network hack proof. So identity is the foundation for cybersecurity. As Binod and Nitant explained about IAM vendors, how they can influence customers. Great to know about that. And here is the next question. What should an IAM vendor's attitude towards customers?
I think in a way in the previous question also we touched upon that, but this is where once again I will bring in the point of the higher level of responsibility that security, especially IAM vendors, have towards customers. It's not about making, I see 100% of the focus from most IAM vendors being on getting the sale. And sure, that is important from a commercial perspective, but we do not hesitate. In fact, one of the largest, I can say, NPCI, the other day we were having conversations, and a lot of these organizations do take some suggestions from us. They have a certain product in PAM. They think it's inadequate to the kind of complications and complexities they have, and they wanted to know from us whether our product would solve the problem. And we told them that no, we would not recommend our product for PAM in this particular case. We would recommend XYZ product. We, by name, recommended a product, and then we said, however, while your core PAM functionality will be taken care of by this product the best, because you have very complex organization, national repercussions are there if something goes wrong there, but that product at the same time is not innovated enough to do the next layer, which is what we call identity governance and administration of PAM, and decentralization or extending PAM even to the critical application entitlements or privileges. So that part we do, and we do have, and we can bring that as an additional layer on top of this PAM security that they have, traditional security, and that's the best solution. So I think vendors have to be very, very careful in terms of not just pushing a sale, because this, as I said, and I very strongly feel about it, and our company feels very strongly about it, we should not be recommending our product if we think it doesn't fit in the criteria. For that, we need to have, frankly, lot of understanding of the space, number one. And number two, we should not be greedy for every single business.
Yeah, great.
I'd like to add just one small thing to that. I don't have much ground experience with identity and access management customers, but I have the reports from the field. I have my marketing experience. I have my response to inbound inquiries. And one thing I would say in creating a bit of a parallel with something that doesn't have to do even with business, if you talk about an IAM vendor's attitude towards the customers and what relationship should be there between an IAM vendor and their customer, it should almost be a little bit like a spiritual teacher and his student. And if you just ignore, any of the fanaticism or guru worship and all that you might see in spiritual realms, there are many authentic relationships within whatever range where there is an appreciation for what the teacher has to say, but at the least there is an acknowledgement that this person has meditated on this topic, meditated on something that I want to know about and that can benefit me for a very long time. And this is the relationship that has to be established here because it is a highly niche domain, not just identity and access management, but cybersecurity as well. And also in terms of preemptive and what we are calling premeditated, preemptive, and proactive threat defense. Customers don't have the expertise, time, or bandwidth, or experience to understand this domain even 10% themselves. And if they find an IAM vendor who thinks deeply about IAM, they should, that relationship is mutually beneficial and enriching if the kind of relationship I'm talking about where at least they appreciate the validity of that person's meditation on the topic, even if they don't agree with what's being said.
I just want to add 30 seconds to this, a very important point. I'd like you to take 2 points home. As very, very senior people in cybersecurity in your organizations, India is at crossroads. There's a lot happening over here. And don't presume that you know it all. Sorry, I'm not trying to preach. I've been in this space for now 24 odd years. And I am seeing even in the more developed and mature markets, things are in a flux. But in India, the flux is going to be of a much higher order in the coming days. So please don't look at the short-term context of, I have got so much of budget, therefore I need to do this kind of technology, and I got to restrict myself to that. That's not going to solve much of your problem. Rather than looking at technology is important, of course, look at the people who are delivering the technology, and in what way they can play a role in your long-term roadmap, and they can contribute to it, because time has come when vendors, as I say, and the customer organizations have to work collaboratively. It's not two people sitting on two different sides anymore. It's a very, very trying time in India. In fact, I don't know how many of you remember, I was in the US at that time in 2004. The Enron disaster happened. And with that, the American Senate, they brought SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley, and that became the starting point for identity and access management in the US. I see multiple SOXs coming out at this point in time in India. If I look at the latest SEBI regulations on cybersecurity, they go beyond anything I have seen in the American context or any other context. And we are not even, many of you are not even aware of it, because you've got your day-to-day jobs to perform, and how much of time is there outside that to come into places like this or to do your own reading and so on and so forth. Therefore, you've got to look at some of the vendors as your collaborators rather than sellers. That's a very important point I'd like you to take home.
I'd like to just give another 30 seconds to exactly what he was saying. We were having a discussion yesterday in the hotel over here, and we realized something. When you talk about a cybersecurity budget, we were wondering who even came up with this idea. How can you have a budget for cybersecurity? Let's say, because of cybersecurity or for any other reason, tomorrow a company's all their servers, all their hardware, all their technology suddenly irreparably failed. Would they say we don't have the budget to buy more of it? You would spend your every last penny to get your company running again. And it's preventative of that kind of a situation, cybersecurity. So we see $20, $30 per user per month being paid for products like Slack, Trello, even your O365 suite, even without the downloadable applications, just the web applications, you're paying $25, $30, $40 per user per month for products that haven't been developed any further in the last 10 years. And customers we are finding in India are shying away from paying even $2, $3 per user per month for end-to-end identity and access management. And that thinking is what we are hoping to start working with, because obviously it can't be given that cheap for many, many reasons. And where we are able to secure a customer because they genuinely are a startup or have a budget problem, we do it because that is our duty. But if a customer can pay and they're paying hundreds of dollars per user per month for all kinds of project management tools, for them to say that we're not going to spend $20 per user per month to help you help other businesses and to help us is not going to work. Not for Indian businesses in a long time. We're going to become a massive cyber attack place. They're all going to start focusing on us and our businesses if we don't protect ourselves quickly.
I'll just give you an example. Insurance industry, I don't know whether anybody from insurance sector is here, is in doldrums. They have not invested at all in identity and access management, and they have, I must have spoken to at least 25 CISOs of insurance companies, almost all of them, and all of them said that, yes, we recognize the importance, but we don't have any budgets for this year, or we have very little budgets. So insurance sector this year has done almost nothing on identity and access management. And no wonder. I was in with one of the CISOs 6 months ago, and while we were chatting and I understood their landscape, I said, you are in for trouble. And he said, I know that, but my management is not sanctioning any budget. And some of you would have guessed the company. There was a hack that happened. All their records were available on the dark web for being transacted, and he got suspended. And I was talking to him. He disappeared for 2 months after that. When he surfaced again, he said, I told him that, I told you, he said, I knew it. And yet another insurance hack has happened with a very large company in Mumbai. You might have read about it again. This is just the beginning, and we are not understanding. So that's where I think, especially CISO community, has got, one of my presentations just talks about that, the responsibility and the role of CISO in current organizations. You can't just live with whatever you got. It's your duty, because your management, your board does not understand still as to what they're sitting on. And therefore, your role is not to just work with what you got, but to make the organization realize that they need to have what is essential.
Yeah, great to hear that. A vendor should not be a product seller. Vendor role is not limiting to sell a product to a customer. Rather, vendor should play a consulting role, whether, like say, that vendor's products meets the customer's requirement or not. So vendor has to provide a genuine consulting approach, consulting feedback. That is the great vision, like say, to have for a product seller. And also, one more key takeaway is CISOs should think from risk point of view, like say from cybersecurity risk. So what are the risks? These risks can only be seen by a CISO in an organization. Like say CISO role is a watchdog, like say watchdog for companies, network or data or security. So before anyone else in the organization, like say CISO should identify gaps in their identity security or data security or network security, and come up with a holistic risk approach. And that risk should be presented to the CXOs, his peers or board of directors. And also, like say, one more point, the gentleman talks about the cybersecurity budget. So when CISO presents cyber value at risk to the board, that means cyber risk quantification to the board, definitely board will understand the value at risk, and also they will listen to the CISO's, they will approve CISO's budget. Rather than buying tools and struggling to integrate these tools, CISO should present value at risk to the board and CXOs. That way, like say, the cybersecurity budget can be shaped up, and also, like say, it will be easy for the board to approve that. Thank you. The next question is on, so what should be the product development approach by an IAM vendor?
I think Nitant was talking about it in his presentation. And it's a very, very interesting question. I can talk on this for a long time, because this is, I believe we are talking it in the context of India, where we are sitting right now, and we are concerned about that. In the context of India, the first thing that I have noticed in the last few years is that a lot of issues that we are talking about here are very localized. I can talk about loan management companies, micro loans. One study that I did, and I found that the way that industry operates in India is very different from the way it operates in the US or many other countries. So in the context, the first thing is that when we develop a product, it should not just be a product which is good in its area, but it's also appropriate to the localized conditions. In this case, we are talking of India. And that's a very, very important consideration, which we, for example, we are a class 1 Make in India vendor, the only vendors from India which is in the leadership of every single analyst internationally for every single module that we are talking about. With that, in that capacity, I'm saying it's important it's not necessary that all of us are at that level, but even smaller vendors, those who are coming up, there are many of them, they should look at the localized conditions and not just copy products. American products, or mostly American products are there in this area. It's important to look at that, and we have started looking more and more and more to find solutions of Indian problems, not just solutions to global IAM problems. So that's one point that I'll pick up. As I said, I can talk on this for a long time, but this is the point that I would pick up given the time we have.
Yeah. Nitin, would like to share?
Yeah, I can add one or two things in the broader context of product development. I won't repeat it too many times. We've already been talking about in terms of that it has to be a problem-solving approach, whether it is specific to an industry, to a specific company itself, or to a geography, or to a time frame, an era of, in terms of how computing is happening around the world at that time in that given year. It has to be specific to that, and the product development approach, you have to, I would sum it up in a simple way. You would have to be ready to scrap your product even though you've been working on it for 1.5 years. If you discover finally that it's not solving any real problems. There might be a market for it. The vendors, the customers might not be aware yet that that product is doing the same thing that other products are doing, and they believe that that is the solution, so therefore you would be able to make millions of dollars from that product. But our product development approach would be that if we found out 1.5 years after product development that it is not something that's adding unique value to customers, we would be ready to scrap it and start over.
I'd just add one more point here. It's a very relevant example. Nitan talked about Gartner's terminology of mesh, identity mesh architecture, right? Kapinger Cole, I don't know how many of you have read them. We consider them far deeper analysts than Gartner in the IAM space. India is very used to looking at IAM, Gartner only, but Kapinger Cole has got a lot more international respect in IAM area. And they talk of the same thing as identity fabric, a word that you will hear more and more in the coming months and years. Happy to tell you that we are already one of the leading vendors. Very few people are developing identity fabric. Identity fabric is typically like a fabric on which anything to do with identity can sit conveniently, can be connected, can interoperate very, very easily with any kind of identity, whether it's machine identity, customer identity, or it is your workforce identity. Now this is the new thing happening, and very few vendors are playing a role in that because it's highly complex, and it requires you to drop your positioning of, I have it all. And that you need to recognize that some things you're very strong in, there are other IAM vendors, there are other vendors who are also strong in their areas, and they should be sitting on your fabric. That should be your responsibility. When he was talking about the new product, the access sphere that we have developed, it is essentially developed with the mind that it will sit on the identity fabric and collaborate with our other product, and indeed any other product that customer already has. You may have some other PAM, you may have something else, and indeed you may have ITDRs, and you have endpoint management, and so many other things that are there. They will all be able to sit on this fabric and interoperate with each other. In our version that we'll be launching in February of Identity Fabric, that will be the first version, we would also have things like, what do you call it, for doing authentication, Aadhaar authentication, what do you call it? KYC. So KYC software also will be, if you already have it, and most of you will be having something that can sit there. There are sockets available. You can put your KYC solution in that socket, and it'll help you. Rest of it will be taken care of, because at the back plane of the fabric, you have all the connections. So these are very exciting things that are coming, and from your point of view, to your question, it's very, very important to start looking at those things. Cybersecurity in identity and access management especially, my experience says that we got to start looking at it 3-4 years in advance. And you got to be able to look into the crystal ball and say, this is where things are going. You may go completely wrong. As he said, you should then be ready to scrap that product. But fortunately, we have not gone wrong so far. And analysts are also very, some of the analysts like Kapinger Cole are big signposts for us. We talk to them. The other day, we were talking to Martin Kapinger on Identity Fabric. So all that is required for a product to be built. It's not just looking at somebody and saying, he has got these features, I don't have it, and therefore I need to build those, and that should become my roadmap. That's the least of things that a cybersecurity, especially an IAM vendor, should be looking at.
I'd like to just add something to that, cybersecurity or any technology when we talk about a crystal ball, we're talking about the human element of decision making on factors that cannot, we're talking about a bit of guesswork, we're talking about predictive thinking and things like that. And that is a valid element, and that is largely what we had, not just us, but any industry had up till 5-10 years ago to make decisions. While there is a certain element of that will always be there in terms of what I think from my experience and my understanding of the way things have been going and will go in the future. But we also industry has access to data-driven approaches a lot more today than it did before. And we are also using we believe strongly in a few things. We believe in logic, we believe in sanity, and we believe in common sense. And even without a crystal ball, just with the best possible data, which we are always seeking, we are making very reliable decisions. We are finding in terms of the applicability to real world scenarios.
Yeah, great to hear that. So great to hear about Fabric, Identity Fabric, where so we can integrate with other IAM products. So that fabric should become a foundation to build holistic identity security, identity access and management solution for an organization. And also, identity should be unified. Like say, we have many identities in our enterprise. So few applications, authentication for few applications happens through mobile number. Few happens through KYC. Few happens through username and password. But like say, we should have a unified, just like KYC, know your customer, know your identity. Know your identity would be the future, and we should stitch all the identities into a fabric, and then so customer can have that authentication using any kind of identity that is mapped to his profile. So great to hear that. And last question to the panel, to the gentleman is, what would be the roadmap for IAM vendors if we look 3 years from now?
So just, I think the future is clearly pointing towards what we began, as Dant was saying, we are the first vendors in the world to come out with a converged IAM product, even before Gartner started talking about it in 2022. Integratability, interoperability is the key to the whole thing. And agility is another important thing. Identity Fabric, I think, is a long-term vision. It has just started happening. On something like Fabric, if you are thinking that it is required only by very large organizations and that small companies don't need it, that's not true. And to that extent, Fabric to be developed even for the smallest organizations to use, a 500 user organization is potentially having as much threat as a 50,000 user organizations. We've got HDFC Bank as our customers, and we've got very small customers. But we are seeing the difficulty that some of the products, and that's how it was all architected earlier, are suitable for a certain size of customers. And Nitant was presenting about these two. Over here, the comparison as standalone products. But when they sit on the fabric, that issue disappears, because then you will practically be able to use one service of, let us say in our case, cross-identity, and another service of the access sphere. And that's what should be looked upon as the future vision. We are already working on it because of being the number one player in the convergence. We started looking at the next level of convergence, which is all the tools, all the security tools, even the business tools like KYCs, to be sitting on that fabric. And the fabric need not be for only large organizations. So that's our vision, and we thought that is the vision that any vendor should have.
Great. Anything from you? Yeah, like say, great to hear about that product roadmap, product vision. So fabric should not be limited to enterprises only. Like say, it should be for every organization, be it small or big. And also, I'd like to add a few things. Like say, security should not be limited to business. Security should be for every citizen of the country. So identity security plays a very crucial role right from kid to senior citizen. So everyone has been exposed to digital technology nowadays. Like say, even kids are learning through YouTube. Like say, they are browsing lot of videos daily to learn new concepts about their school or college. And also senior citizens, they use mobile internet or like say mobile banking or internet banking. And we are experiencing lot of cyber threats, just like digital arrests and all. So to prevent, like say, identity theft, so IAM vendors should come up with a vision to adopt this security for every citizen of the country. So I hope, like say, cross identity or identity plus would step into citizen security as well. Like say, rather than securing business, citizen security also should become need of the hour. Yeah, thank you. Any questions from audience? Like say, for the gentleman.
I do have one question. See, typically during the IAM installations or adoption typically into the organization, IAM and access management, one of the things that I have observed is that most of the organizations are not ready with the roles. So example is, let's say, typically expectation is that when somebody new joins at X role, by default the all related access and allocation should happen. So what's your thought about the readiness about the organizations in terms of defining the roles? Because many times people buy the product, company buy the product, but when it comes to implementation, they really do not go for their actual implementation, and they end up in doing only for IT that, okay, this is the admin privilege, do this 1, 2, 3, and the other privileges are still not done properly. So what's your thought?
Thanks for, it's an excellent question, and thanks for bringing it up, because I think it's of practical relevance for almost every organization today. The question is that, am I ready for IAM? Because IAM mandates that certain things are already in place, especially your processes, rules, as you said, are already in place, and then I can utilize the best of the IAM technology. The answer is that hardly any organization is ready for an ideal IAM implementation. Nobody is ready. A good tool should be able to begin where you are not ready, where it doesn't require a lot of readiness. And we can certainly have a conversation with anybody who would like to have answers specific to his organization as to which areas you should be approaching and starting with, and then what is it that you need to put in place over a period of time that will make it easier to then take on the other areas. That's point one. The second important point is that the very implementation of tools brings about certain processes. You don't have to look at continuing with only your processes. That happened because your organization grew in a certain way, and that's how it ended up having certain processes. Implementation of an IAM tool is an excellent opportunity for organizations to standardize their processes, because that's what vendors bring. If you implement an IGA solution, for example, it will give you 5 different ways to make an access request, but it will not give you the 6th. You may be following the 6th. So you need to look at, am I doing the right thing, or I should be doing one of these 5 things? And now that I'm bringing in a tool, anyways, it's so easy for me to change that process and implement that. So unless you're ready to change some of your rules which came in place only because you grew that way, doesn't mean they are the best of rules and processes. So it's both ways. And you can start, IAM is a journey. You don't do everything in day one. There are a lot of vendors, and I feel sad, see them promising today in India, and in 3 months I'll implement everything. It doesn't happen that way. IAM is a 3-year journey or more, and it never stops, right? So in that sense, a good vendor should be able to tell you, begin here, do it like this, in 3 months' time you should have this. You know, I keep on hearing this from a lot of CISOs. I want to buy by 31st December, and I want to have everything implemented by 31st March. And most of the vendors say, yes, we will do it. We don't, because that's being completely dishonest, and you're misguiding. So that brings me back to the point that you made in terms of the responsibility of the vendors. So yeah, so it's both ways, you know. Tool helps in bringing in better processes in the organization, and based on the processes that you have, the journey can start with a few things and then keep on continuing and gaining momentum.
I'll add one small thing to that. Building on the analogies that I've been talking about so far. Let's take an example of 2 different homes, physical homes. Somebody has been living in an area for the last 10 years, and take an example of another house that has just been newly built. Neither of them have had any security issues, but let's take a situation where suddenly the old house is, and this is the situation of long-standing companies, 20-year-old, 30-year-old, 50-year-old traditional enterprises in our country, which perhaps originally did not experience much of a cybersecurity problem. But suddenly this house has changed in some way in the neighborhood, in the same neighborhood. It has become a high crime area. They have not had a security guard so far. They have not even developed more than a basic gate, which is easy to jump across. Would they wait for 1 year to change that gate? And would they say, I don't have a guardhouse, so I can't hire a security guard? Or would you, as soon as possible, within 1 week, build a guardhouse so that a security guard can be there and change your gate? It has to be done. If you look at that statistic again, every organization, including every one of our organizations in India, has the highest statistic right now, number of breaches per week. 2,000 cyber attacks. Perhaps not all of them are large scale, not all are detected, and perhaps some of them are cyber attacks where they're trying to explore the vulnerabilities for a bigger cyber attack later, so you don't have any damage at that time. But 2,000 cyber attacks in every organization around the world individually per week is a crying cause for concern, and we obviously can't change certain things for the customer, but they really, in their own best interest, should start making sure that the environment can support identity and access management.
Great. Any other question?
Hello. India has come with this Digital Personal Protection Act. So how an IAM tool will help us in complying to the new regulation?
IAM plays a very, very important role, especially when you start looking at CIAM, the Consumer Identity and Access Management. In fact, that's one of the reasons we have advanced our development of the access sphere, which supports CIAM use cases. CIAM, especially when you look at DPDPA kind of a thing, requires and mandates certain things. One of them, I'll not get into details for lack of time, one of them is progressive profiling. One is consent management. And these are areas that are very much supported by consumer identity and access management solutions. Certainly ours already does. So that actually creates more dependence on identity and access management of a different kind, the CIAM kind. And this is another irony today. CIAM is today, if you look at an enterprise, if they have CIAM, you find that being controlled not by CISOs, but by people who are working on the consumer side, mostly business people on the consumer side. The marketing department who works with consumers, the consumer, who's responsible for consumer business. And that's a big problem because eventually it's also identity and access management, the major parts of it. And there should be some role of CISO there as well. But today there is very little. And this unification of the two would be through the concepts like identity fabric, where both the consumer as well as the workforce will converge. But to answer your question, the identity and access management, especially CIM, has got a huge role to play in the DPDPA implementation and enforcement.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi. My question, now Microsoft or other vendor, they are driving towards the passwordless authentication. Even application vendor also, they are thinking biometric or the other eye-based authentication like that. So what is your roadmap as a vendor or developer for the identity and access management? Okay, because if Microsoft itself going for the passwordless authentication going forward in the future, then how identity and access management will help in this roadmap? Okay.
Can I take this to start with? So Microsoft, they have the biometric authentication. Are you talking about Entra ID, or are you just talking about like O365 and things like that?
In the both O365
Both, yeah.
and Entra ID, they are planning for removing the complete password. Okay.
Right. Have they talked about this? I haven't seen, because I know that they so far are pretty heavily password based, and the Entra ID doesn't even have native biometric.
Yeah, they have published the paper as well, articles as well in the IEEE and that. Okay, so I think that they have in their roadmap. Okay.
All right. That's interesting to hear, and thanks for letting me know. I would love to look at that. My thought over here is that we know a lot about Microsoft by now. The last 20 years, they've been the biggest giant in software, this thing. And what they are talking about is largely similar to Windows Hello and their other biometric authentications to Windows and things like that. And it is largely limited, most likely both in terms of its applicability to Microsoft itself, Microsoft's ecosystem, and larger purpose, unfortunately, we've seen a lot of this, is to, they don't think in terms of empowering businesses and organizations and softwares beyond their own product portfolio. That's just something that I wanted to point out here. But when it comes to biometric authentication, when it comes to passwordless, we're going to be doing a strong push from our side in trying to get customers to give up on credentials, on password-based credentials. And but the other thing also is that at the moment, I believe we are the only identity and access management vendor in the world who has our own native integrated biometric authentication in our platform. Almost everybody else uses some form of external integration, or just exposes, or they're just FIDO2 compliant, which is the standard for protocol for passwordless authentication with biometrics. And passwordless in itself does not mean biometric. Passwordless just means passwordless. It can move to OTPs, it can move to 100 different things. And the ideal situation is to standardize across the industry what's easiest, most effective, and most cost effective. And we don't see anyone taking a stance behind that, the industry in general. It's still about catering to as many options as possible. I was thinking about this the other day. When you talk about multi-factor authentication, there's so many options these days. Not just in terms of the different technologies within a certain kind of technology, for example, a token-based OTP like Microsoft Authenticator. There's about 20 different ways to do multi-factor authentication in itself, and people are still trying to find new ways of doing it. And why? We should find a few ways that are reliable and cost-effective and standardize them. But it's still, the industry is still looking too much at how can we make something a little bit different so that we have no competition over there. Yeah, so there was a little bit of an extra this thing that I took this opportunity to point out something else. But in terms of passwordless, in terms of biometric, yes, we are pushing for that with our customers as well. And ours is the only one which already has it integrated natively into the suite. And we don't charge anything extra for it. Generally, passwordless authentication features in most access management platforms, first of all, they're not native, they're not built in, and they charge something like anywhere from $8 to $10 per user per month just to add that feature. And to enable the whole thing, we are eliminating that cost, extra cost.
I'd just like to add something there since you talked Microsoft. No company in the IT industry ever has been able to have a product set which is everything to everybody. Right from an individual to an enterprise with 5 lakh people. If you're trying to do that, you're just being greedy. And that's where the problem is. I won't say anything more than that. Microsoft has done an excellent job after Nadella came in terms of becoming very agile and looking at the Azure as a platform. They put all their dollars in it, and they have really done an excellent job of it. But again, at the enterprise level, when you're looking at, you got to be careful in terms of, can it solve all the use cases? The other day, I was told, and then I looked at it, they've started saying that we can do single sign-on to legacy applications. Invite them to do that. And you'll see such a broken, badly designed way of doing it. It doesn't even work properly. So you don't have to, that's what I was talking about earlier. There's got to be a much higher level of integrity than to just make profits when you talk about cybersecurity as an area that you live in. And you have to, another thing is, yesterday I was sitting with one of the large oil companies right here. They have their security center. And they were saying, do you charge, they don't even have single sign-on, and they were saying, do you charge extra for it? So we said, of course, it's a new technology, so if you're implementing that, we will charge. And they said, but then it's like Microsoft, that for everything you're charging. I said, but you don't have anything from us. You have so much for Microsoft, and then yet they keep on charging additional amounts, and you don't mind paying. That's the beauty, that customers in India don't mind paying to Microsoft $20, $40 a user a month, and they have problem in paying $1 or $2 or $5 on a vital area like identity and access management to somebody else. In fact, that brings one more point to me, that don't start underrating Indian vendors. India may be nowhere close to US or Israel on cybersecurity products, but some companies are doing a brilliant job. I've got my colleagues sitting there. I know they're doing a good job. We have been there in this space for 23 years, including the services part of it. And we are not in the business to just compete with the American vendors. We are in the business to create something original, especially for the Indian ecosystem, which is world-class and which will make our American counterparts learn a few things also in the process. So I went a little beyond your question.
Hello. So I would just like to add that we should not be seeing Microsoft as a security company at all. I just want to add to what you said. Microsoft is interested to sell its entire ecosystem, be it Defender, be it Azure, be it any other product. They just want to sell the entire ecosystem to any organization just for the ease of doing implementation and business. But we should not be seeing them as a security company.
I completely agree. And if you guys have a look at our brochures later on, I have a battle card type brochure with Entra ID. The cybersecurity domain, when it comes to being able to predict needs and threat landscapes and things like that in the future, you need extensive experience and expertise that goes down into your DNA as a company and as the core people working in it. And Microsoft is kind of, as you pointed out, they have a history of doing this, just trying to leverage as much dominance that they have, with every system being Windows, every system being dependent on O365 and things like that, to just keep adding more and more things. But this is somewhere that they will not truly be able to win, because you need to do it, first of all, in a problem-solving way. It can't be business-centric, and this is clearly a business-centric approach from Microsoft, and they just don't have that deep and intimate expertise and experience needed to truly be able to solve problems going forward. Thank you for that.
Just to extend that, I'm going to look at Azure directory. It's not a cloud directory. A product that requires an on-prem directory to be a must for it to exist in cloud is not a cloud directory. There are a lot of good cloud directory products, right? None of them really requires an on-prem counterpart to be sitting there. But not that Microsoft cannot do it, but they do not want to give away the licenses revenue that they have from Active Directory, even for those customers who have gone into cloud. So that's exactly the point we were making a while ago, that cybersecurity is a domain where there's got to be a lot more integrity, and other than just profit-making motives, right? So I think a lot of organizations see that today.
Yeah, thank you. So it's a great chat, and my pleasure to host both the gentlemen, and it was a great fireside chat. Thank you.
Thank you so much.